The days following Tasha's arrest were insane. My parents were suspiciously quiet, spending hours locked away in their study. They barely looked at me, and when they did, their faces were hard and twisted with resentment. I tried to convince myself that soon they'd finally see the truth for what it was. One night, as I passed by the study door, I heard them talking quietly. My name came up more than once, and the more I listened, the clearer it became that they were concocting a plan to pin Tasha's crimes on me.
We need to act fast. There must be a way to shift this back onto Sasha. If we can prove she planned it, maybe they'll go easy on Tasha.
We can say Sasha manipulated her, pushed her into it. No one would question it. She's been bitter and jealous of Tasha her whole life.
I felt sick. They were trying to rewrite the story to save her, planning to paint me as the villain in Tasha's game. My own parents were willing to have me locked away if it meant keeping her safe. Growing up as a twin can be horrible. People think you're the same, just two halves of a single unit. But that was never the case for me and Tasha. She had the charisma, the looks, the charm, everything our parents adored. And me? I was the quiet one, the plain one. It didn't help that Tasha was their favorite either. I suppose I should have seen it coming. My parents were the type who didn't think twice about putting her first, even if it meant forgetting I was there. If she was failing a class, they'd hire the best tutor. If she wanted to skip chores, they'd tell me to take over. I didn't hate her for it, or at least I tried not to. It wasn't her fault they worshipped the ground she walked on, but sometimes it felt like she was using it against me, like she enjoyed watching them take her side. The day it all started, I was coming home from work. I was feeling drained, ready to just collapse on my bed. But the moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. There was a strange, heavy silence in the house, and when I walked into the living room, I found my parents and Tasha sitting there.
Sasha, we need to talk.
My dad's tone was different. I mean, it was always stern like that, but there was an extra. My mom looked at me with that same disappointed look she always wore when she thought I'd done something wrong. And Tasha, well, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good.
We found out about what you did, Sasha. We're giving you a chance to come clean before we have to involve anyone else.
I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. What on earth were they talking about? I hadn't done anything. I spent most of my days working or reading in my room. I wasn't exactly living a double life. I don't understand. What did I supposedly do?
Tasha told us everything. We know you've been stealing money, using her name to get credit amounting to $20,000, and making fake investments. We found the documents, Sasha.
It was insane. I hadn't done any of those things, and yet, there they were, looking at me like I was some kind of criminal. I glanced over at Tasha and saw her smirking with a satisfied look. I didn't do any of that. I would never.
Oh, come on, Sasha. Just admit it. You've been jealous of me for years. You were always the quiet, overlooked one, and now you're trying to ruin my life because you can't stand that I'm better than you.
Her words stung, but not as much as the look of sheer disappointment on my parents' faces. They didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. They'd already decided I was guilty, all because Tasha had pointed her finger at me. My dad handed me a folder filled with documents, bank statements, credit card applications, even fake IDs with my name on them. I was speechless. Tasha had gone to extreme lengths to frame me, and it was working.
We're giving you one chance, Sasha. Come clean, and maybe we can work something out. But if you keep lying, we're going to have to take this to the authorities.
The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked at Tasha, hoping to see some hint of guilt, some indication that this was all just a horrible mistake. But she simply crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow, daring me to contradict her. At that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with them. They'd made up their minds, and they were going to believe whatever Tasha told them. And they will involve the cops. I was alone in this. I didn't do any of this. I don't know how you could believe I would, but my words fell on deaf ears. My parents shook their heads. Without a word, my dad turned his back on me, leading my mom and Tasha out of the room. I was left standing there, feeling the weight of their betrayal settle over me like a suffocating blanket. The next few weeks, my parents stopped speaking to me entirely, treating me like a stranger in my own home. Tasha, on the other hand, reveled in the attention. She played the role of the wounded victim perfectly, soaking up their sympathy and casting sly glances in my direction whenever they weren't looking. It was like she was daring me to fight back, knowing I had no way to prove my innocence. But then, something unexpected happened. A detective showed up at our door, asking questions about the fraudulent accounts and the money trail. Apparently, some discrepancies had been found in Tasha's story, and the bank had flagged the transactions as suspicious.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sasha was the one who handled all of that. I had nothing to do with it.
Her desperation was so visible, but the detective wasn't convinced. He had too many pieces of evidence that didn't align with her claims, too many details that didn't add up. And for the first time, I saw doubt cross my parents' faces.
Tasha, are you sure you're telling us everything?
Daddy, believe me. I swear it was all Sasha.
But it was too late. They took her for questioning, but she returned that day. However, after a few days of intense investigation, the detectives uncovered a mountain of evidence pointing to Tasha as the true mastermind behind the scheme. The officer traced the money and tracked what it was used for. He even had photos of Tasha at a nightclub buying expensive drinks, and managed to obtain our phone records, linking Tasha to addresses I hadn't even been to. She'd been using my name to open accounts and make investments, all while pretending to be the innocent victim. And now, her lies were starting to crumble. When the truth finally came out, my parents were horrified. They'd spent weeks condemning me, believing every word Tasha had said without question. And now, they had to face the fact that they'd been played for fools.
I don't understand. Tasha, how could you do this to us? You know we trusted you, sweetie.
It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought I could handle it. I didn't think anyone would actually believe Sasha was capable of it.
Her excuses sounded hollow, even to her. I expected an apology from my parents. They'd been so quick to blame me, so eager to protect her, and now they were paying the price for their blind loyalty. However, when I looked at them, I saw that they had pity in their eyes for her. My mom was even crying. As soon as the police took Tasha into custody, I thought things would finally be over. Even though my parents didn't apologize to me, I decided to forgive them, thinking they would eventually come around. But my parents weren't done. Their disappointment and pity for Tasha had quickly turned into a desperation to shield her, as if protecting her could erase the shame they felt. They were always staring at me coldly, as if I'd somehow pushed Tasha into that mess. I soon got to know that they were determined to save her at any cost, even if it meant sacrificing me again. The days following Tasha's arrest were insane. My parents were suspiciously quiet, spending hours locked away in their study. They barely looked at me, and when they did, their faces were hard and twisted with resentment. I tried to convince myself that soon, they'd finally see the truth for what it was. One night, as I passed by the study door, I heard them talking quietly. My name came up more than once, and the more I listened, the clearer it became that they were concocting a plan to pin Tasha's crimes on me.
We need to act fast. There must be a way to shift this back onto Sasha. If we can prove she planned it, maybe they'll go easy on Tasha.
We can say Sasha manipulated her, pushed her into it. No one would question it. She's been bitter and jealous of Tasha her whole life.
I felt sick. They were trying to rewrite the story to save her, planning to paint me as the villain in Tasha's game. My own parents were willing to have me locked away if it meant keeping her safe. For days, I lived in fear, wondering when they'd try to make their move. I overheard them calling the police station, hinting at new evidence and making subtle implications that they believed I was the real culprit. I stayed quiet, but I knew I had to do something to protect myself. Finally, I took a step that felt as desperate as it was necessary. I went to the detective handling Tasha's case and told him everything I'd overheard.
Thank you, Sasha. We'll keep this in mind.
After that, I could only wait. I wasn't sure if the detective believed me or if he thought I was grasping at straws, but I hoped my story was enough to protect me. A few days passed, and I heard nothing until the night I heard my parents' voices raised in anger. It was close to midnight when I heard a loud knock at the front door, followed by voices demanding my parents come outside. I crept downstairs and watched as two officers entered. They had paperwork, something official, and before I knew it, they were leading my parents out in handcuffs.
This is a mistake. You can't do this. You're arresting the wrong people.
We have evidence suggesting you attempted to obstruct justice and falsify information to protect your daughter. You'll have a chance to explain yourselves, but for now, you're coming with us.
My parents fought against their arrest, throwing accusations at me as the officers led them to the door.
Sasha, how could you? You're doing this to us after everything we've done for you?
I was in tears while they were being taken away. The next day, when I went to the police station, I discovered what my parents had done. Apparently, they forged voice notes and documents of me manipulating Tasha into doing what she did and sent it to the cops. It was all so stupid. Their plan to make me face punishment for Tasha's crime was so whack despite all the hours they spent planning. Tasha was just as stupid as them. I nearly laughed when I heard it. The signature they even forged didn't look similar to mine. They were really stupid. I requested to see them and they couldn't even stare at me. They were too embarrassed. My parents faced charges for attempting to tamper with a police investigation, and Tasha's case only grew stronger with the new evidence against them. They'd tried to bend the truth too far, and now it was finally breaking under the weight of their lies. They were all found guilty, Tasha for fraud, and my parents for obstruction of justice. When the verdict was read, my parents barely glanced my way. I wanted to believe that they were simply consumed with their own regret. But I no longer cared. For the first time, I felt free. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale with shock and shame. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for them, to reach out and offer some kind of forgiveness. But after everything they'd put me through, I knew I couldn't. They'd chosen their favorite and they'd paid the price for it. After that, I started to rebuild my life. I moved out of the house, cut ties with anyone who had believed Tasha's lies, and focused on creating a future that was free from their influence. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the loneliness felt overwhelming. But I knew I was better off without them. Years later, I heard that Tasha had been released from prison. She tried to reach out to me, begging for forgiveness and help because she was broke, homeless, and miserable. But I ignored her calls. I'd spent too long living in her shadow, and I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her chaos. I later heard she was arrested alongside a notorious gang member, and drugs were found in their basement, so she was taken to prison again. As for my parents, they never fully recovered from the scandal. Their reputation was in ruins, and they spent the rest of their lives haunted by the choices they'd made. They tried to make amends, to reach out and apologize, but it was too late. When they got out, no one was willing to hire them, and the bank had sold their house due to missed payments. My parents ended up working as janitors and living in a small apartment. I'd moved on. I was no longer just Tasha's twin, or their quiet daughter who always faded into the background. I was my own person, and I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. He was holding her hand tightly, almost crushing her little fingers to keep her from running to me. "How dare you hit a 10-year-old little girl?" I scream. Marina began to yell back at me, waving her arms angrily at me. With her arms in the air, her sleeves rolled down, and I saw her bare arms. They were covered in track marks, the telltale sign of a heroin user. "You degenerate drug addict. You're still using, aren't you?"
What? Oh no, you're accusing me of that, in my own house.
With that, she jumped at me and knocked me over. She grabbed my hair and hit my head repeatedly against the cold hardwood floor. I started to black out, too weak to fight her off of me. Suddenly, she was pushed off of me. First, I thought Mason had finally came to his senses and was the one fighting her. As I began to see again, I realized that he still stood at the foot of the stairs, just watching all of us. Kinsley had pushed her off of me. I quickly turned to look at Marina. She was leaning over Kinsley, her face red with anger. She was preparing to hit my poor daughter, when I hit her first, hard to her stomach with a bat I found in their hallway. She immediately fell to the floor, holding her stomach. Her groans finally made Mason move, and he rushed to her side. "My name is Audrey, and I thought my nightmare ended 4 years ago when I divorced my husband Mason. Unfortunately, it was just the start of another one. I filed for a divorce because I caught him sneaking around with another woman behind my back. Actually, my 10-year-old daughter Kinsley caught him. How horrible is it to discover your father with another woman and then have to tell your mother about it? I still feel so guilty for not seeing the signs sooner. I could have prevented her from going through that pain. Sometimes as a mother, you have to accept that you can't protect your child from everything. My therapist had to tell me that a lot after the divorce. Shortly after the divorce was finalized, Mason publicly announced the woman that he had been cheating on me with to be his girlfriend. Her name was Marina. Marina and Mason. Of course, I was humiliated, but I kept it to myself. The only contact that I had with him was when I dropped Kinsley off at his house for the one weekend a month that he got her. In the court hearings, he didn't get full custody, but a weekend visitation. I wasn't happy with it, but I still wanted my daughter to have some relationship with her father, even if he was a lying, cheating scumbag. He's still her father, after all. My therapist had to convince me of the importance of their relationship, despite how angry I still was with him. After some time, though, I realized that something weird was happening when Kinsley would go to visit her father. She would come back silent and would barely talk or look at me. She would only wear long sleeves that covered her arms and legs. This happened for several weeks before I finally decided to talk to her about it. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You always look so sad whenever you come back from your father's house."
It's his girlfriend. She's mean to me, bosses me around, and makes me do hard chores around the house.
Well, you need to do chores sometimes, sweetie. But she's mean to you?
Yeah. I'm scared of her. She hits me sometimes too.
What? Have you told your dad about this?
Yeah, and he doesn't care. He keeps saying it's just my imagination, and I'm lying because she's not you.
It all started to make sense. Whenever I would drop Kinsley off, I would see her tense up as if she was afraid. I already didn't like Marina, much less trust her, after she ruined my marriage. But this, an entirely different matter. My daughter's safety would always come before any personal issues I have with someone. I told Kinsley that I would talk to her father and get things straightened out for her. I called Mason that evening and talked to him. "Do you know what your daughter said to me? She said that she doesn't feel safe in your house because of your girlfriend. She told me that she hits her."
I wish she would have said something to me about it. I promise you, everything is fine over here, and she's in perfectly safe hands when she's with me. A little discipline never hurt anybody.
How can I trust you not to lie? You've lied to me before about Marina. Our divorce ringing any bells?
A little discipline and hard work won't hurt anybody. You should be thanking me that she's getting it somewhere. You're just trying to start trouble so that you can take away what little time I get to have with my daughter. I won't let you take her from me, Audrey. I love Marina now. Get over it.
I hung up the phone. I was tired of talking to him. He clearly wasn't listening. That was just the first of many phone calls that I had with him. Each time I tried to ask him more about Marina, he wouldn't tell me anything, and kept telling me that Kinsley was fine, that she was only lying so that she could go back home to spend more time with me. "You are the favorite parent after all, Audrey. She's 10. I wouldn't put it past her." I gave up trying to reason with him. If I was going to protect my daughter, I needed to do some snooping of my own. I couldn't keep Kinsley from seeing her father, but I could get her a better phone so she had a more reliable way to contact me if anything happened while at his house. I put off the monthly visitation for as long as I could, waiting until the very last weekend of the month. There were a few times where I was in the driveway of their house, and I could hear the two of them screaming at each other before I dropped her off. I felt so uneasy about the whole situation, but I really couldn't do anything about it. I did my best to be patient, and gathered as much information as I could. I talked to Mason's neighbors about the two of them, and they said that they've had to call the police a couple of times to file noise complaints. Apparently, a few weeks prior, the two of them had gotten into a huge fight with each other. It ended with Marina pushing Mason down a flight of stairs. He didn't press any charges, so nothing changed about their situation. I also found out that Marina had a past of drug addiction. When I talked to Mason about it, he swore up and down that she had been clean and sober for years. In January, I tried to do my usual of waiting until the last week of the month for Kinsley to visit her dad, but I got really sick. I kept fainting and was too lightheaded to even walk. I had to make a tough decision. I couldn't take care of Kinsley while I was sick like this. Against my better judgment, I called Mason and asked him to come pick up Kinsley, and he did. She had been gone for roughly 4 hours before she called me. She was panicking, whispering into the microphone.
Mom, I know you're sick, but I really want to come home. Marina hates me for no reason, Mom.
Why? What happened?
Marina made me make dinner like she usually does. And when I sat down to eat with them, she screamed that I shouldn't be sitting at the table with them at all. She hit me really hard, knocking the sauce on my plate all over the floor.
She hit you?
Yeah.
Where's your father? Did you tell him about what's going on?
Yes, but he said she was just disciplining me. I started crying and couldn't stop, so he locked me in this closet. It's so dark and I'm really scared, Mommy.
In the background of the call, I heard Marina screaming at the top of her lungs.
You naughty little sack of crap! I told you not to use that stinkin' phone in there. Your stupid father should have taken that away from you. Let's see how well it works when I smash it to bits.
I had read stories of mothers performing crazy feats of strength when their child was in trouble. I could only imagine it before, but this was the moment where I experienced it firsthand. Mason lived 2 hours away. As sick I was, I drove to go pick up my daughter that night. It didn't matter that I didn't have enough strength to change out of my pajama pants anymore. Fighting against the nausea and the dizziness was almost too easy because I was filled with so much anger. I sped the whole way there. I busted through the door. Marina came around the corner of the living room and began screaming at me. Mason came down the stairs holding Kinsley's hand. At first glance, it might have looked like a loving father providing support for his daughter in a scary situation, but I knew better. He was holding her hand tightly, almost crushing her little fingers to keep her from running to me. "How dare you hit a 10-year-old little girl?" I scream. Marina began to yell back at me, waving her arms angrily at me. With her arms in the air, her sleeves rolled down, and I saw her bare arms. They were covered in track marks, the telltale sign of a heroin user. "You degenerate drug addict. You're still using, aren't you?"
What? Oh no, you're accusing me of that, in my own house.
With that, she jumped at me and knocked me over. She grabbed my hair and hit my head repeatedly against the cold hardwood floor. I started to black out, too weak to fight her off of me. Suddenly, she was pushed off of me. First, I thought Mason had finally came to his senses and was the one fighting her. As I began to see again, I realized that he still stood at the foot of the stairs, just watching all of us. Kinsley had pushed her off of me. I quickly turned to look at Marina. She was leaning over Kinsley, her face red with anger. She was preparing to hit my poor daughter, when I hit her first, hard to her stomach with a bat I found in their hallway. She immediately fell to the floor, holding her stomach. Her groans finally made Mason move, and he rushed to her side. I grabbed Kinsley's hand, spat on their floor, and ran out the house. In the driveway, we called the police. When they arrived, they talked with the four of us. They lied, claiming that Marina never attacked us. Thankfully, the officer only had to take one look at my swollen and bloody face to tell that they were lying. The injuries were to the back of my head, and there was a little dent in the floor from where she banged my head onto the floor. Fortunately, I was able to protect Kinsley from being attacked again. With the police report and the Child Protection Services report, there was enough evidence to punish the two of them, despite all of their blatant lying. Mason lost all custody of Kinsley and had to pay a crazy expensive fine for child endangerment. It was such a large fine that he couldn't pay it all before the deadline. This happened for months, and the interest fees got larger and larger until he couldn't even make a dent in how much he owed. His solution was to try to sell some of the heroin that Marina had left behind. In a drug deal that went wrong, he tried to trick someone into paying 3 times more money than he should have, and the buyer caught on. The man was so angry that he crippled Mason's right hand with a pipe, the same hand that he used to try to keep Kinsley from running to me that night. Marina was found guilty of child abuse for beating Kinsley, and was sent to prison for 10 years. For the first few weeks after the trial, she had to stay in the hospital before being transferred to the prison. When I had hit her with the bat, it had cracked a couple of her ribs. She stayed in the state hospital for months before being transferred to the prison's hospital. When she finally got there, she ended up still being a danger, just to herself this time. She turned to other inmates to be her source for drugs and alcohol while she was in prison. Apparently, someone had taught her how to make wine in the toilet, but she had missed a crucial step and ended up severely poisoning herself and died in the prison's infirmary. As for me and Kinsley, Without those two psychos in our lives, we were finally able to live together in peace. My brother had heard of the fiasco that had happened with her father and volunteered to step in Kinsley's life so that she could have a positive male role model. It's made such a difference. He's been helping me with chores around the house, supporting Kinsley with school, and even helps out with our finances. I've never seen Kinsley happier in her life, and seeing her happy makes me happy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. One night, while Tom was in the shower, he got a call from our neighbor. I answered. Hello?
Oh, thank goodness you answered.
What's wrong?
Louise wasn't feeding your baby at all. Every time I went over to check on them, she looked thinner and thinner. I called Child Protective Services, and they confirmed my suspicion. She's now in the hospital being treated for malnutrition. I warned Tom that something was wrong with his mother, but he insisted that I was paranoid.
What? I took the next flight home, leaving Tom completely alone. At the hospital, I found Maddie and talked with a team of doctors. Thankfully, the neighbor reported Louise before Maddie was too far gone with malnutrition. They had her on an IV and was expected to make a full recovery. They asked me what had happened, and I explained that my evil mother-in-law had starved my child. I added that my husband was aware of her misdeeds and gaslighted me when I came to him with concerns. All of the doctors were readily eager to help me and pointed me towards a reputable divorce attorney and a banker who could help me stash away my money from Tom. You know how you have doubts about something or someone and you just ignore them? I had my doubts about marrying my husband, Tom. More specifically, I had doubts about Louise, his mother. Tom and Lucy had a very weird relationship where he would do everything she said. It was like she wasn't just his mother, but his wife too. She picked out his clothes, made his bed every day, and cooked for him breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mind you, Tom is a full-grown man. Tom was embarrassed of how big of a part his mom played in his life and didn't let me meet her until we had been dating for a year. When she met me, Tom explained to her that we were planning on getting married. She was furious and interrogated me like I was a criminal.
How often will you be cooking for him? My Tom needs 3 home-cooked meals a day, every day. How often do you wash the bed sheets in your home? I wash Tom's no less than once a week and fold all his laundry with the utmost love that only a mother can give. You also need to be performing your wifely duties to him whenever he requests in order to keep him healthy and bear me my grandchild, who is to be named after me, of course. That's the only reason why I'm allowing him to marry you.
Allow him to marry me? Excuse me, but Tom is an adult and doesn't need his mommy to tell him what to do all his life. Not only that, but everything you're saying is so backwards and outdated. What you're describing sounds like a terribly sexist and unbalanced marriage that I would never want to be part of. I talked to Tom about the concerns that I had about his mother, and he totally understood. He explained that since his father walked out on them, he and his mother shared a very strong bond. He promised that it wouldn't be an issue in our marriage, and he would be on his best behavior in protecting me from her, as well as explaining that her behavior was unacceptable. I believed that he loved me enough to try to work it out, and agreed to marry him. After our wedding, Louise became a jealous monster. She was jealous and taking the son away from her. She called us every day of our honeymoon, and tried to convince Tom that she was deathly ill and needed him to come back to her house immediately. Luckily, Tom was able to see through his mother's lies. The holidays and family get-togethers became very tense around her, as her passive aggressiveness towards me grew. Tom had set boundaries with her and explained that she needed to be kind to me as my mother-in-law, but instead this just made her more underhanded in her ways of getting back at me. She would take money from my purse, buy me clothes that were too small and call me fat, siphon gas from my car, hide my shoes whenever we'd visit, or only serve food that I was allergic to. Whenever I told Tom about it, he would ask her and she would deny it.
Mom, did you put hair in Alexandra's food?
Of course not, dear. I was even wearing a hairnet. No one else got any hair in their food. Maybe it was Alexandra's own hair that she found. Her hair seems to be falling out more than mine.
My hair isn't gray.
Are you sure? I see that you have some already. You age quicker than me, don't you?
I tried my best to convince Tom that Louise had it out for me and that she was purposefully making my life harder, but he defended her. He claimed that she had changed since we got married because she saw how important I was to him. He asked that I do my best to get along with her because she was trying so hard to be amicable with me. I agreed, but kept my distance from her. I demanded that holidays were only celebrated at our house, and I made sure that I was never alone in the same room with her. I begged Tom for us to move to a different state. He agreed. That seemed to help for a while. Life was amazing. Without Louise living so close by, Tom only talked to her on the phone. No more random visits or passive-aggressive bullying. After about 4 years of us being married, we had a baby girl. We named her Madeline, after my grandmother. I remembered that Louise had wanted to have a grandchild, and that she demanded the child be named after her. But I refused to name my daughter after a woman who had treated me so horribly. I begged Tom not to tell his mother about our daughter. "What?" he cried. "How could I not tell my mom that she has a grandchild?" Shortly after Maddie was born, Louise had a mysterious illness that made her want to be close to us. I suspected that she was once again lying to Tom, but I couldn't prove it. Tom, deeply concerned for his mother, asked her to move in with us. I was terrified for me and my daughter. Shortly, after she moved back in with us, Tom became more and more busy with work, and that left the three of us alone a lot. She was up to her usual antics of bullying me in ways she couldn't get caught, but now that Tom wasn't around, she would outright scream at me and Madeline. "How dare you not name your child after me?" she yelled. "After all I've done for the two of you over the years, only I know how to take care of Tom." I would take Madeline and hide in the closet, away from the terrible woman. Every night, Tom would come home and find me in the closet, asleep with Maddie on my chest. He thought we were playing a fun game of hide and seek. After months of this abuse from his mother, I gave him an ultimatum. "Either you kick your mother out or I'm divorcing you."
Whoa, whoa, whoa. You know she's sick and needs to be with us so that we can take care of her.
"She's not sick. All she does all day is scream at me."
It's natural for you to have some tension with her. The three of you have been spending a lot of time together, and you might just be needing a break from being cooped up all day. What do you say the two of us take a vacation?
"What about the baby?"
My mother can manage to watch her for a couple of days while we're gone.
I really didn't want to leave my baby alone with her, but Tom has such a convincing way of talking. He also said, since I was so concerned, he would have our neighbor check in on Louise and the baby. I had an absolutely wonderful time on our vacation. We hadn't had a chance to be alone with each other in ages, and I began to remember why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. We went on romantic walks on the beach and had lots of long, late-night talks that we hadn't had since we had been dating. One night, while Tom was in the shower, he got a call from our neighbor. I answered. "Hello?"
Oh, thank goodness you answered.
"What's wrong?"
Louise wasn't feeding your baby at all. Every time I went over to check on them, she looked thinner and thinner. I called Child Protective Services, and they confirmed my suspicion. She's now in the hospital being treated for malnutrition. I warned Tom that something was wrong with his mother, but he insisted that I was paranoid.
"What?" I took the next flight home, leaving Tom completely alone. At the hospital, I found Maddie and talked with a team of doctors. Thankfully, the neighbor reported Louise before Maddie was too far gone with malnutrition. They had her on an IV and was expected to make a full recovery. They asked me what had happened, and I explained that my evil mother-in-law had starved my child. I added that my husband was aware of her misdeeds and gaslighted me when I came to him with concerns. All of the doctors were readily eager to help me and pointed me towards a reputable divorce attorney and a banker who could help me stash away my money from Tom. I looked at my phone and saw that I had 15 voicemails from him. I blocked him for the time being. When I returned to the house, Louise was standing triumphantly at the top of the stairs looking down at me. In a blind rage that only a mother could feel, I lunged at her and pulled her down the stairs. In the tumble, Louise cracked both of her hips. I left her lying on the floor, crying in agony, while I threw out everything in the house that belonged to either her or Tom. A pile of their belongings laid in our driveway as Tom pulled up to the house. Seizing the opportunity, I tossed a match into the pile. Everything in it burned. Tom screamed in horror as his precious belongings burned. I thanked the neighbor for saving my child and explained to him the story of why Louise had put her in danger. He became even more enraged at her pettiness and offered any help I might need in the difficult period I was facing in my life. I asked him to testify against Tom in court. He eagerly obliged. At the divorce proceedings, he told everyone how Tom left his child to his neglectful mother's devices. Not only did I get custody of Maddie, but I won the house and all of the money in our joint banking account. The news played our story on repeat, telling everyone about the man who let his mother starve his child. He was publicly ridiculed and sent death threats daily from strangers. He and Louise decided to move to another state, but the story followed them on social media everywhere they went. After fracturing both of her hips, she really did need help from Tom. Her hips never healed properly, and she lost the ability to walk. She was now bound to her wheelchair and grew weaker every day. She was reliable on Tom to do everything for her, but he had grown resentful of the role she had played in ending his marriage. After about a year of being her caretaker, he abandoned her and left her for dead. All of the death threats and hateful messages got to Tom eventually, and he decided to take his own life. As for me, the neighbor decided that he wanted to take care of my daughter and I. He proved a much more caring and loving man than Tom ever was. We decided to get married, and he adopted Maddie to be his own child. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
I told you that I would kill you if you crossed me again. You're too stupid to have that dog, and so I liberated it from you. But since you broke into my house, I'll break into yours and kill you and take that dog back. Oddly enough, Vince hadn't noticed the police had arrived, and they heard everything that he had said. Seeing him with a weapon, the police drew their own guns and pointed them at him. Sir, put down the gun and back away from that house now. What are you idiots doing here? Just shut up. This doesn't concern you. Sir, I said for you to put the gun down now. Vince, of course, didn't listen, and he turned, and in a fit of anger, he shot at the police. I knew that he had been unstable, but I hadn't realized just how unstable he was. One of the officers was hit by Vince's shots, but the other fired back and hit Vince and caused him to fall to the ground. The whole thing was over in a matter of seconds, but it terrified me. Hi there, my name is Rick, and I recently moved into a new neighborhood, and it was one of the most horrible experiences in my life. I had gotten promoted at work a few months ago, and my income had grown enough that I felt very comfortable buying a small house and moving out of my small bachelor pad apartment. It had served me well for many years, but I had always wanted something bigger and to stop paying rent as well. And so, I started looking for a house that would fit my needs perfectly. One that especially had a fully fenced-in backyard, because I had also always wanted a dog as well. So when I found a cozy bungalow in a quiet neighborhood that was within my price range, I thought that I had found my dream home. But the problems started very quickly after I moved in. The day that I moved in, I met my neighbor Vince, and let's just say that we did not hit it off right away. Our driveways were right next to each other's, and I had just assumed that it wouldn't be a problem. But boy, was I wrong. I parked the moving truck I had rented on what I had thought was my driveway, but Vince thought differently. Hi there, my name is Rick. I don't care what your name is. Get that piece of crap off of my property. What? Sorry, I really thought that I was far enough over with the truck. It's probably 10 feet from your property. You could not be more wrong, bud. You can either move it or I will go into my house and get my gun and make you move it. Got it? He looked like he was being serious, and so I jumped into the truck and moved it half onto my front lawn. After that, I moved my belongings into my house, and thankfully, I didn't see Vince for the rest of the day. But that one interaction was enough to make me very afraid of him, and I honestly didn't know what to do about him. I did call the police, but they told me that even though they had received word that he had threatened other people in the past, that they had no legal recourse against him since he hadn't waved his gun around. I found that incredibly infuriating, but friends of mine told me to just let it go for now, but to keep an eye on things and get the police involved should things get worse. Of course, it didn't take long for things to get worse though. A few weeks later, I came home to find both driveways full of vehicles, none of which I recognized. I knew that I should leave it alone, but I couldn't. I called the police and told them what had happened, and again, they told me that there was nothing they could do and that I needed to call and have the cars towed away if it bothered me that much. And so rather than confronting Vince, I called for a tow truck to remove the cars that were parked on my portion of the driveway. When it arrived and removed the first car, Vince and his friends rushed out of his house and confronted the tow truck driver. The owner of the car managed to convince the driver not to tow his car away and that he would move it. After that, the owners of the other cars moved their cars onto the street. Meanwhile, though, I ducked into my house so that I could avoid any conflict with either Vince or his friends, but they came and started pounding on my front door. You coward! Why don't you come out here and face us like a man? Why would I do that? There are 6 of you and only 1 of me. Maybe next time, you shouldn't be a jerk and only park on your own driveway. You made such a big deal about me being on yours in spite of the fact that my moving truck was only on my own. And then you park all over my driveway. What kind of self-centered ass are you?
The previous owner didn't have a car, and they gave me free use of their driveway whenever I wanted, which means that I can do as I please. If you pull something like this again, I'll make sure it's the last thing that you ever do.
After that, Vince and his friends left, but not before they keyed my car and smashed a couple of flower pots that I had on my front porch. When they were for sure gone, I called the police and reported what they had done, and shortly afterwards, 2 officers showed up. One came and spoke to me, while the other went to talk to Vince and his friends. However, after they gathered both our statements, the cops told me that there still wasn't anything that they could do. Vince had more witnesses that backed up his side of the story, and since I didn't have any way to prove that they had parked on my driveway or had threatened me and destroyed my property, then it was my word against his, and unfortunately, he had witnesses. I was enraged by that point. My own neighbor had threatened my life twice now, and the police refused to do anything. I couldn't help but wonder, what did he have to do for them to finally do their damn jobs? After that, things were fairly quiet, and while I wondered how long it would last, I enjoyed the peace and quiet and decided that one thing that would help me feel better would be for me to finally get a dog. If nothing else, having a pet would help me to relax and enjoy my new home. And so, I went down to the shelter and found the cutest puppy there and brought him home. It took some effort, but the dog took very well to being trained, and shortly after coming home with me, he was housebroken, and we began to play in my backyard every night after I got home from work. Things were really beginning to look up, but of course, my happiness would be short-lived. After all, I lived next door to a psychopath. One day on the way home from work, I picked up some new toys for my puppy and was looking forward to playing with him when I got home, but I found my house empty. I searched high and low for him, but could not find him anywhere. I knew that he had to be in the house or the backyard, as there was no way for him to get out. I examined every square inch of the fence to make sure there were no holes in it, and after looking it over twice, I was at a loss for words. That's when I heard it. From Vince's house, I heard the faint sound of a dog barking, while I had no way to know for sure that it was my dog. I knew that Vince did not have a dog of his own, and that he was crazy enough to kidnap mine. I knew that he must have lured my dog through the doggy door and had kidnapped him from my backyard while I was at work. On the one hand, I could call the police and ask them to try to get my dog back, but Vince could just say that it was his dog and then it would be my word against his once again. So instead, I waited until I saw Vince leave his house. Once I knew he was gone, I jumped over our fence and using a hammer and a crowbar, I broke into his house through his back door. I then followed the sounds of my dog barking and found him locked up in Vince's basement. I busted the lock on the door and freed him and took him back home. I wasn't sure what I was going to do when Vince got home, but I decided that I would call the police and tell them that I saw some random person break into Vince's house while he was gone. I was smart enough to wear a mask and gloves, so I knew that should they investigate that, at the very least, they wouldn't find evidence that I had done it. Or at least that was my hope. And that the police told me that they would be over in a few minutes, but Vince arrived first. He stormed into his house, and after a minute, I heard him scream out in anger from inside my own house. Scared, I went to peek out my window and saw him run out of his house armed with rifle and then head towards my house. I hid and prayed that the police would soon arrive, and as he pounded on my door, they thankfully did.
I told you that I would kill you if you crossed me again. You're too stupid to have that dog, and so I liberated it from you. But since you broke into my house, I'll break into yours and kill you and take that dog back.
Oddly enough, Vince hadn't noticed the police had arrived, and they heard everything that he had said. Seeing him with a weapon, the police drew their own guns and pointed them at him. Sir, put down the gun and back away from that house now. What are you idiots doing here? Just shut up. This doesn't concern you. Sir, I said for you to put the gun down now. Vince, of course, didn't listen, and he turned, and in a fit of anger, he shot at the police. I knew that he had been unstable, but I hadn't realized just how unstable he was. One of the officers was hit by Vince's shots, but the other fired back and hit Vince and caused him to fall to the ground. The whole thing was over in a matter of seconds, but it terrified me. Minutes later, the neighborhood was swarming with police and paramedics. Neither Vince or the cop were dead, but both were very badly injured and were rushed to the nearest hospital. Once they were gone, the remaining police asked me questions, and I stuck to the story about a stranger breaking into Vince's house. They already knew about our relationship and that Vince was notorious for being hostile and unstable. When they didn't find my fingerprints or signs that I was the one that broke into the house, they believed my story. I was so incredibly grateful, but I had decided that I was done. There was no way that I was going to take a chance and stay there any longer. I had no idea what was going to happen to Vince, and on the odd chance that he was going to be returning to his house, I decided that I was done living there, and I listed my house for sale. It didn't take long for me to sell my house, and I actually managed to make a little bit of profit on it, which was unexpected. I took my money, and I moved across the country to a quiet dead-end street. Thankfully, my job was able to transfer me to the office that was closest to my new house, which made things easy for me. It didn't hurt that my new neighbors were young families and were extremely friendly and welcoming. It took a few months, but I eventually felt at home and safe and happy that I had gotten far away from Vince. As for him, though, that day went very badly for him. The cop that had shot him permanently injured his hip, which meant that Vince would not only have chronic pain in his hip for the rest of his life, but that he needed a walker in order to walk, and even then, it was very difficult for him. However, that was the good news for him. He had finally crossed the line, and having shot a police officer, he had the book thrown at him, and he was sentenced to prison for 15 years. While in prison, he had been forced to declare bankruptcy, and he had lost his house. Hearing that made me feel silly for selling mine so quickly, but the peace of mind that doing so brought me was worth it. After all, I didn't want any of Vince's friends to come looking for me to get revenge on his behalf. So in the end, the police finally did do their jobs, but I'll be honest, I'm still a bit angry that it took Vince shooting someone before they finally did anything, although I do feel a little guilty. After all, if I hadn't broken into his house to get my dog back, that officer wouldn't have been shot, but there's no way of knowing what would have happened instead. I'm just glad to finally be living in my dream house with lovable puppy and having friendly and most importantly sane neighbors. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
The moment I stepped into the office, my manager spotted me, his face filled with anger. He marched toward me like a bulldog.
Charlotte, where the hell have you been?
I'm sorry. There was this pregnant woman being robbed, and I helped her. Before I could finish, he slapped me harshly across my face. I stood there, stunned, too shocked to even respond.
You think I care about your excuses?
He slapped me again.
You're late. You think you can just stroll in here whenever you feel like it?
I couldn't say a word. The rest of the office was silent, everyone watching, but no one daring to intervene. This wasn't the first time he had hit someone, but it was the first time it had happened to me.
You're fired. Get your things and get out. I don't need lazy idiots like you ruining my team.
I didn't know what to say. I felt numb. I don't think I'll ever forget that day, the day my life changed in ways I hadn't imagined. It all began on a normal morning, a day I was meant to be at work like any other. My job was nothing special, an average desk job at a company where I reported to an increasingly hostile and unreasonable manager. But even with that, I took pride in my work. I was punctual, never complained, and did my best to meet deadlines, no matter how unfair the demands were. My manager, though, seemed to always have a reason to single me out. It felt like I was his personal punching bag. There was that time I had stayed late to finish a report for him, and when I asked for a slight adjustment in the deadline, he laughed in my face.
You think I'm here to babysit you, Charlotte? If you can't do the job, maybe you should leave. We don't have room for weaklings here.
I remember blinking, not saying a word in my defense. There was no point. He was the kind of man who got off on making others feel small, so I just nodded and stayed an extra 4 hours to finish the work. No overtime, of course. He didn't believe in that. Then there was the time he caught me talking to a colleague during lunch.
This isn't a social club, Charlotte. You come here to work. If you have time to chat, I'll give you something more useful to do.
I wasn't even on the clock then, but again, I didn't bother arguing. He had made life miserable for others who tried. People talked about how he was always finding new ways to withhold bonuses or delay salary payments. Then one faithful day, as I was walking to work, something unexpected happened. I was about to cross the street when I saw a pregnant woman, maybe about 7 months along, walking ahead of me. She was alone, carrying several shopping bags, probably groceries or baby things. At first, it didn't seem like anything was wrong, but then, just as she was about to turn the corner, 2 men approached her. Their faces were covered by hoods, and I saw them eyeing her like predators sizing up their prey. They reached her before I could even shout a warning.
Get away from me!
One of them grabbed her purse and she stumbled back, almost falling over. I couldn't just stand there and watch. I ran over, not thinking about the consequences or the fact that there were 2 of them and only 1 of me. Hey, leave her alone. I barely had time to process what happened next. One of the men turned to me and swung his fist. I dodged the punch. I grabbed the other man's arm as he tried to snatch the woman's purse again, pulling him back with all my strength. There was a brief struggle, but soon, people nearby noticed the commotion, and the robbers panicked. They took off, dropping the purse and some of her bags as they ran. The woman was shaken, holding her stomach as she tried to calm herself.
Thank you so much. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in.
I nodded, out of breath, but relieved she was all right. It's okay. You're safe now. We called the police, and luckily, they arrived within minutes. The robbers were caught not too far from where they had run off, and they were arrested on the spot. The woman thanked me repeatedly as she made sure everything was accounted for.
I owe you. Can I at least have your name? Maybe your number, so I can properly thank you later?
I hesitated for a second, but gave her my contact details anyway. She insisted on knowing where I worked, which I found a little odd, but I told her the name of the company, and even mentioned my department.
I'll make sure to visit and let your boss know how kind you were. Take care.
I was happy I had helped her, but I was also aware that I was going to be late for work. My manager wasn't exactly the forgiving type, but I hoped he would understand once I explained the situation. I was wrong. The moment I stepped into the office, my manager spotted me, his face filled with anger. He marched toward me like a bulldog.
Charlotte, where the hell have you been?
I'm sorry. There was this pregnant woman being robbed, and I helped her. Before I could finish, he slapped me harshly across my face. I stood there, stunned, too shocked to even respond.
You think I care about your excuses?
He slapped me again.
You're late. You think you can just stroll in here whenever you feel like it?
I couldn't say a word. The rest of the office was silent, everyone watching, but no one daring to intervene. This wasn't the first time he had hit someone, but it was the first time it had happened to me.
You're fired. Get your things and get out. I don't need lazy idiots like you ruining my team.
I didn't know what to say. I felt numb. I had just been fired for saving someone's life. As I packed up my desk, I could feel the eyes of my coworkers on me, but none of them said a word. They were afraid, and I couldn't blame them. I left the office that day with a heavy heart. My manager had always been cruel, but this was a new low. I went home, devastated. What was I supposed to do now? How was I supposed to pay my bills? Maybe if I hadn't stopped to help, I wouldn't have lost my job. But no, I shook the thought away. I had done the right thing. 2 days passed, and I was still trying to figure out my next steps when I received a phone call.
Charlotte, it's me, the pregnant woman you helped the other day. Could you meet me at your company today?
I can't. I was fired, and I'm not allowed on the premises anymore.
Come anyway, trust me, just come.
I hesitated but decided to go. When I arrived at the company, I was nervous. What if my manager saw me? Would he have me thrown out? But when I stepped inside, the receptionist greeted me with a smile and directed me to the CEO's office. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I followed her instructions. When I entered the CEO's office, I was surprised to see the pregnant woman sitting there, smiling warmly at me, and beside her, the CEO himself.
This is my husband, and I wanted you to meet him because we found out what happened to you.
She went on to explain how she had inquired about me with the manager after our incident, but the manager had lied, telling them that I had been fired for being irresponsible. But that wasn't the end of the story.
Luckily, one of your co-workers told us the truth. In fact, several of them did. They told us about how your manager has been treating everyone, how he delays payments, withholds bonuses, and mistreats the staff.
We were furious when we found out. That man has been abusing his position for too long, and we're going to deal with him today.
They called a company-wide meeting and gathered all the employees in the main hall. I stood to the side, unsure of what was going to happen next. The manager walked in, his usual proud expression plastered on his face, but that quickly faded when he saw the CEO standing in front of everyone and his pregnant wife beside him.
We've received some disturbing reports about your conduct as a manager. Also, the day you fired Charlotte, she was in fact helping my wife. Your time here is over. What? These are lies. Charlotte was irresponsible. She lied. Oh, shut up. You've been mistreating my staff, underpaying them, and abusing your power. I have seen videos of you even physically abusing them. I should have fired you a long time ago. Now, hand over the keys to the company car.
The manager was shocked, but he had no choice. Under the watchful eyes of the CEO and all the employees, he handed over the keys.
You're no longer a part of this company. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Please, there must be some mistake. I've been loyal to this company for years. I made sacrifices. Enough. Your loyalty was to your own ego, not this company. You took advantage of the people who trusted you, and it ends today. Security.
2 guards appeared at the door.
Wait, Charlotte, you know me. You can tell them, can't you? I wasn't that bad.
I stared at him with anger. There had been so many times I had wished for this moment when he would finally get what he deserved, and now it was happening. I could still feel the sting of his hand on my face, the humiliation of being fired for doing the right thing. No, I didn't owe him anything. You treated us like dirt. And now you're getting what you deserve. Leave our company. The guards immediately grabbed him and dragged him out of the hall and the company. He wasn't allowed to take anything. It was a disgraceful termination.
You all did the right thing. We won't let someone like that hurt others anymore.
From this day forward, things will change around here. We're going to rebuild trust, and we're going to make sure everyone is treated fairly. We've been blind to what was happening, and for that, I apologize. Charlotte, I know you've been through a lot because of that man, and I want to make it right. You've shown incredible integrity and bravery, not just in helping my wife, but in standing up to injustice. That's the kind of leadership we need in this company. We'd like to offer you the position of manager. I think you'll do a far better job than that old fool.
I couldn't believe my ears. Me? A manager? It was shocking. But then I realized something. I had earned this. I had worked hard, endured hardships, and now I had the chance to make things better, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been mistreated by the previous manager. Yes, I'll do it. The employees clapped, some of them coming over to shake my hand, congratulating me on the promotion. It felt unreal. Just days ago, I was fired and humiliated, but now I am the new manager.
There's one more thing we want to do. We've been speaking with some of the employees, and we want to make sure everyone gets the back pay they're owed. We'll also be restructuring the bonus system to ensure fairness.
Everyone couldn't stop thanking them. I stepped into my role as manager, and everyone cooperated with me to make the company a better place. The former manager visited a week later and gave an apology to everyone in the company. Afterward, he called me and the CEO, requesting to be brought back in.
Since I've apologized, I deserve my position back. I can't imagine not working here, and I'm sure Charlotte knows that I'm a better manager.
That was it for the CEO. He got angry and slapped the former manager.
She's the best for the work. You can't compare to her. Now get out of here, and don't ever show your face here, or I'll involve the cops.
He went down on his knees, begging. I immediately called security, who chased him out of the company with dogs. Those who saw him running burst into laughter. It was quite a funny scene. Some even recorded how he ran, fell, got back up, and how his pants tore as he ran. Videos of him fleeing from the dogs were posted online, and kids made fun of him, giving him the nickname, the Dog Runner. That wasn't the last time I heard of him. The next time was 2 years later. He was now working as a receptionist at a hotel where I was having a meeting with some clients. I got to know that his wife and children had left him over domestic abuse. His wife had sued him and left with half his property. He was required to work because he was mandated to take care of his kids. My colleagues and I were leaving the hotel when we heard a loud noise. When we looked, it was my former manager. His boss had just slapped him. When he saw me, he quickly hid his face. I laughed loudly and walked past him. I would have spoken to him, but a man like him doesn't even deserve to hear my voice. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. We'll do our best to reply.